Ah, you'd be fine. Start it off, brother. Monday. Put it in your head. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB Strategy Show. A little 4-game early slate, 6-game late slate. Not too much to tackle today. 10 games in total. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS, breaking it all down for you on a Thursday morning. What's good, brother? How you doing?
Pretty good. Wish Dane Dunning hadn't done so well last night.
That was a crazy performance.
Finished 8th in the big DraftKings tournament. All 7 teams ahead of me had him. Just, scored less than 20 points like you have every other start this year except for one, and I win.
Yeah. And what was the pitcher's name for the Royals that had
Cole Reagans?
Hell of a start for that fella too.
Yeah, my team that came in 8th had a 0 from Pete Alonso against him, so screw him too.
Yeah, well, we got some stuff to break down. Happy to have you guys with us as always. Hey, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below if you're watching or listening after the fact. At the very least, we read all of them. Oh, go check out my fantasy or my betting breakdown for the Hall of Fame game tonight over on the Odd Shopper channel. Say hello there too. Leave a comment, thumbs up, whatever. Subscribe to that. We got so much football stuff coming up. It's going to be fun. $50K to first place tonight too for DFS in the Hall of Fame game between the Browns and the Jets. Yeah, it's nuts. Oh, and our preseason package, first week is $1. First week is $1 for preseason projections. Matt Kajeski's projections are fantastic, and it's $1. Link in the description and in the chat. Why not? I mean, it's not like you're paying $1 and going, oh man, first place is $500 in their biggest contest. This ain't no baseball bullshit when it comes to some of these contests. We love baseball, but $50K up top. And Matt Kajeski is the maverick. This guy is phenomenal when it comes to preseason stuff. So we got a show tonight, live show coming up, I think 7:00. I'll be on there with him. But check it out, $1 for the projections for the first week of preseason football in the description. Anyway, dude, we got some stuff to talk about. Oh, and our podcast, listen and podcast platform. It's all free. Leave a rating, review, subscribe if you haven't been there yet. All of our stuff is out there. I had a hockey game last night. We played this. This was a playoff game, right? And we played this team 2 weeks ago. Our goalie played like just shit, but 2 weeks ago we lost. It was tied 2-2. We're older, we got some older guys on the team, but we can still hang. We only had 3-3 the last time we played them. So 3 offense, 3 defense. So like we crush it through the first 2 periods. And then the third period, everyone's just sucking wind. We end up losing 7-2. Brother, we mercy ruled them in the second period yesterday.
What's mercy rule in hockey?
So the old rink that we used to play at was 10 goal. In this one, if you 8 goal them. So yeah, 9-1. They couldn't get anything into our zone. They were younger kids trying to toe drag, put it through your legs, just close up the legs, kick it out to yourself.
You don't play ice hockey, do you?
No, why?
I guess I hadn't thought about it, but because you said toe drag and put it through there, I just immediately thought of ice skates.
Dude, I'm telling you what, roller hockey, first of all, if you're playing ice hockey at my age, your game time's at like 11 o'clock at night. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Roller hockey's huge around here though. It's huge around here. And there's some really good teams and players. But no, yeah, we took them to task, dude. We took them to task. So on to the next round, baby. But dude, like we got one guy on our team, he's 52 years old.
That's insane.
But he's still like pretty good. If you just keep doing it, if you keep playing, you can kind of keep up with it. But the moment you take off for a season, you're done. You're cooked.
Yeah, I can see that. And I mean, that's even like baseball. Like I played summer leagues when I was like, 21, 22, and then took like a summer off and went back to play like one game. I was like, I suck. This is so much harder than it used to be. Like,
but here's the difference. Because our old rink closed down. We had to go to a new rink, which is great because it's 15 minutes from my house. But after you play a full season and just persevere through it, the next season you're fully back.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
It's just the first season. There's a little like you still can play, you're not great though. And then the next season, like, oh, okay, I'm still good. That's kind of how it always was with me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just said, screw this. I'm not good anymore. I'm not playing.
It's easy to get discouraged. The good thing is no one else on the team is good when you all take off a season.
Sure.
So I hate being like bad at athletic stuff. And if there is something that I don't think I'm good at, I'll generally just be like, I'll find something else.
Yeah, that's how I've treated soccer my entire life.
Yeah, right. All right, so let's get into it. We got 4 games for the early, not a super early start today. It's 2:05 Eastern time. That runs through 3:45. That's the last game, last first pitch for the 4-game early slate. Let's dive into it and take a look at them. Game 1, White Sox plus 215 today on the money line in Texas against the Rangers, 8.5 total. And that's because you got Touki Toussaint going for the White Sox. Max Scherzer debuting for the Texas Rangers. So now the question is, Max Scherzer in this particular spot looks pretty good. Not a high total for the White Sox. Huge home favorite. Obviously not the greatest park in the world, but if you were to ask for a couple of matchups that you could grab as your debut appearance with the Rangers, it certainly wouldn't be Lucas Giolito getting the Braves yesterday or something like that.
Yeah, Jack Flaherty's getting the Blue Jays later on this slate.
Yeah, that's
against Kevin Gausman.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. At least it's not in Baltimore, though.
What'd you say?
At least it's not in Baltimore for his sake, like in debuting in front of the home crowd.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking they should have just held him off one more day, have him start against the Mets in Camden Yards next start, but instead they just throwing him into it. But yeah, it's as good a spot as you're going to get for Scherzer, and he's been good this year. I mean, obviously, he's not peak Scherzer, but he's still striking out 27% of hitters, 4.09 xFIP. Good matchup against the White Sox. 3.3 implied run total for Chicago. No more Jake Berger, so their lineup gets even worse than it normally is. As far as, for a 4-game slate where you have pitchers in tough matchups, you don't have a ton of good pitching, Scherzer is about as easy of a play as it gets.
You see ownership on Scherzer and Gausman for this slate?
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. But 65% going to Scherzer, 63% going to Gausman. Falls off a cliff after that. Your boy Flaherty's getting a little bit.
Well, it's just like after those two, where do you even start to go? I mean, Flaherty, you can say Flaherty because he's at least relatively talented, but he's got a tough matchup. You can say Carrasco because he's facing the Royals, but he sucks. Like
Brady Singer against the Mets at 7,400.
Right. I mean, not the most exciting spot to get to. Brandon Pfaadt against the Giants. Like, there's not a lot that you can follow up the Gausman Scherzer conversation with.
No. And on the other side of this one, Toussaint against the Rangers. I know he's super cheap. He's $5,400. He's getting 8%, slight positive leverage. But again, that's because he's so low owned. I mean, that's a brutal spot for him as well.
Oh yeah, brutal matchup. He has been very good at limiting power this year. He's actually been good at limiting power in the past as well. 31.6% K percentage against righties in a small sample this year. Only striking out about 12% of lefties. Should have a pretty balanced Texas lineup. At 5,400, I do think Toussaint's playable just for the reasons we kind of were just alluding to. Once you get beyond Gausman and Scherzer, there's nothing that you're going to feel comfortable with on this slate. You have 21% ownership going to Brandon Pfaadt at 6,300, only 9% coming to Toussaint at 5,400. I wouldn't have any problem turning a little bit more of that Brandon Pfaadt into Touki Toussaint, but that's not anything I'm saying with confidence. It's just he's cheap. He has been good at limiting power, and our options on this slate are very limited outside of the top two.
Hey, Chris Williams. Thanks, dude. Appreciate you, man. Gifted 10 stochastic memberships here on YouTube. Getting off to a good start on a Thursday morning. Appreciate it, man. Make sure if you got one from Chris, you say thank you. That was very generous of him. Also, can you hit that thumbs? Can we get to 50, please? We're at 41 because I just hit it. I'll call on Adam and Jordan to do so because I'm sure they haven't.
I already
That'll get us. What?
I already did.
Wow. Okay. All right. I know Jordan just did. We're 46. So we're going to pop north of 50 here. We get to these Texas bats. But the Texas Rangers right now do have a 5.6 implied total. That is interesting what you're saying, though, just from like a power perspective with Touki Toussaint. But in the same breath, if you're just looking at opposing totals for pitchers today, nobody does have a higher implied total than the Rangers. And another thing it's probably worth considering, right, is that like Brandon Pfaadt That's in San Francisco. Brady Singer, you're talking about like power metrics for a park. That's in Kansas City. So some of these other pitchers that aren't particularly good, you can throw Carrasco into the mix as well. It's not like any of them are pitching in super hitter friendly ballparks either.
Yeah. Agreed. I don't know what you were asking.
I'm talking about the fact that you're saying Toussaint hasn't allowed a lot of power, right? Like he's been good at that, but it's still the highest total for the Rangers on the slate at 5.6. And then a lot of the other bad pitchers on a abbreviated slate are pitching in pretty friendly pitcher parks.
Yeah, and this one's average for run scoring. It's been above average for home runs over the last 3 years. And the other thing here is like Toussaint's been good at limiting power. He's certainly already in a short sample this year, given us plenty of times out where we stack against him and he pitches well and they don't come through. But you're still talking about one of the best offenses in baseball against a pitcher that has always had talent, but has never consistently put it together at the major league level. It's still more likely than not that if you were to just, play 1,000 matchups between Toussaint and the Rangers, that the Rangers beat him up pretty good a high percentage of the time. So they are still going to look good here, even with the concerns about the fact that Toussaint has been able to limit power. We have them right now first in top stack percentage at 20%, 17% projected ownership. They're third in stack score just because of how expensive they are. But if you can get to Texas, great. They have Corey Seager back. He's only $5K, so his salary dropped quite a bit while he was injured. Still no Jonah Heim, I believe, but it's a very good lineup.
What about, did we just get a super chat from Chris Williams? Thanks, man. $20 super chat. Also, he said, just wanted to say thank you to both for the great content. Many of my Apple coworkers are on board now and on the channel. Had my biggest MLB win yesterday thanks to the great content. That's amazing, man. Yo, hit us with a screenshot as well. Yeah,
congrats, that's awesome.
Hit up Stochastic Hall of Fame. Chris, do me a favor. See if we can get Adam maybe a discount on an Apple Watch. I'm trying to get this guy, to get the watch on, get into Jordan and I will share, like we have the shared workouts and stuff on there, get some motivation going throughout the day. We're trying to get Adam on board, especially since he's going to be taking off for a little while here. Slap that on your wrist, baby.
Yeah. Lofty is weirdly interested in what my movements are throughout the day.
You know what? Instead, you should be thanking me as a good friend who cares about your physical health and doesn't want to see you die of clogged arteries by 37. But
dude,
instead,
I get at least.
Instead, you make some, covert reference to my. I can't say that.
I get at least 330 steps a day.
Yeah, dude. When you said that to me the other day. When you said that to me the other day, like, sometimes I could legit pull like 400 steps. That's when I started to worry a little bit. But
it's those hangover days where, because like I don't need to leave my apartment for anything. So if I don't feel like it can get bad.
Yeah, no, you fucking need to leave your apartment. What do you want to do with the New York Mets and the Kansas? Unless, do you have any interest in White Sox bats today? We can hit on that quick.
I mean, nothing outside of the fact it's a 4-game slate, and if they happen to do well, you're knocking off 2/3 of the field. But there's nothing I can point to that is likely to succeed. Luis Roberts, obviously the best hitter in this lineup, but 220 expected ISO to righties for Scherzer this year, 166 to lefties. So again, Robert, Jimenez are fine, but clearly one of the lower probability spots.
Talk about the Mets and KC here. Carlos Carrasco, he's getting no ownership. I don't know. I guess just looking at this, if you were to ask me which one of the cheap pitchers is my favorite, you have Brandon Pfaadt against San Francisco. That probably makes the most sense. And then by default, you'd probably have to just be like, yeah, I guess Carrasco because it's Kansas City at Kauffman Stadium. But I don't really know how much analysis there is past that. Yeah,
exactly. Like if Carlos Carrasco had shown the ability to be any semblance of his former self this year, he would easily be the top value play here, taking on Kansas City in KC. But he's just been awful. And every time it seems like maybe he's taking a step forward, he just kind of spins and stays in the same spot, gives up, has a couple bad starts, and there's just nothing to build on here. So like he's 6,800. He's facing the Royals. He's been good throughout his career, but he's been awful this year, and there's nothing that suggests that's changing. So you're really just at a point where let's pray he pitches well, I guess. Like 13.7% K percentage to lefties, 18% to righties, 224 expected ISO to righties, 178 to lefties. This team is bad offensively, but it's not like they don't have anybody that can hit. They're still, a major league team. And Carrasco really hasn't been a major league pitcher this year. So you're going to get some just because it's a 4-game slate. He's only getting 6% ownership, but really tough to have any level of confidence there.
It really is. And then Brady Singer on the other side. I don't know what to make of the Mets offense right now, but Singer's 7,400. So, he's still the fourth highest priced pitcher on this slate going up against the New York Mets, $7,400. Let me ask you, this is probably an easier way to pose this question. There's Scherzer and then there's Gausman. Once you get past those two guys, how are you prioritizing? I'm using that term loosely. How would you prioritize these other pitchers?
Most likely just kind of spreading it out. Like,
okay,
I haven't built lineups yet, but my assumption is, I get why Brandon Pfaadt's the most popular guy. I get why Singer's second most out of the non-Gausman, Scherzer, Flaherty guys. But Toussaint 8%, Carrasco 6%. So of those four pitchers, you're getting essentially a combined 40% ownership. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up kind of playing 8 to 12% of all of them.
Brady Singer's last couple of games, though, have been, from a strikeout perspective, pretty wild. What is it? So his last two starts, he has a strikeout rate that's sitting at, he struck out 40% of batters over his last two starts. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, and it is interesting just because it's been a really weird year for Singer where he hasn't been nearly as good, especially from a strikeout standpoint, as I think was expected. He'd shown signs in the past of, developing into a good young pitcher. And then this year he's been okay, 4.2 xFIP, but only striking out 20% of hitters. But that underlying talent is still interesting. And, it's always possible that he made some sort of change and that the strikeouts are going to stick around. 9 against the Yankees, 10 against the Twins. The counterpoint is he was facing the Yankees and Twins, who are the worst the Yankees, one of the worst offenses against right-handed pitching. Twins, the best strikeout matchup for right-handed pitching. So, we'll see if he can continue it. It is a more difficult strikeout matchup against the Mets, but there is also the potential for the bottom of this order to be really bad. We don't know if Brandon Nimmo is going to be in there or not. He's missed the last couple of games. Day game after a night game, likely you have Narvaez instead of Francisco Alvarez. We've seen Danny Mendick playing. We've seen Ortega in this lineup. So there is the potential for a weaker than usual Mets lineup here. Given the lack of other good pitchers, I think Singer is a solid SP2. But again, tough strikeout matchup depending on the lineup the Mets run out there. And outside of the last couple of games, Singer has been pretty underwhelming from a strikeout standpoint this year.
Almost said 300 steps. Snails walk further than that in a day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the days, there have been days that I look at the step tracker and I'm just it's kind of impressive I moved that little.
Dude, you're going to be featured on a TLC show soon. You're going to be calling your mom or dad from wherever they live to come help you take a shower soon. It's gonna be...
Right.
Yeah, you're going to be doing shows from bed. I'm sorry. Dude, if you just one day ballooned to the point where you had to do your shows from bed and you just had everything set up in your bedroom, the laptop on your lap, and you're in one of those hospital things where you start the show and you start raising up. Oh my God. I can't believe you don't find this funny. Just the visual of that. No, you're not getting 300 steps. You're using your phone for that. So it's probably sitting at your desk sometimes where you walk around, unless it's always in your pocket. Then
you don't need to make excuses for this. There are days that I just do not move.
That's crazy. Can we see if you could get 50 in a day? Just no, because you can't just wear a diaper at your desk.
Right.
So I'm thinking bed to. Do you get coffee? Do you make your own coffee?
Yeah. So not always, but definitely on the 200 step days.
Okay. And then to the desk.
Yeah.
So I will wake up, you go take a piss, right?
Which is in my office. There's a bathroom off of my office. I don't piss in the corner, but.
So we're talking 10, 12 steps per movement.
Right. I can, if I'm efficient, I can get out of bed, walk over, make coffee, wait for the coffee, bring the coffee into my office, take a piss, be at my desk. I took 20 steps.
Yeah, right.
I can then leave my office. The couch is in the living room, right on the other side of the wall in my office. Sit on the couch, turn on Netflix.
Right.
If my DoorDash driver is one of the good ones that actually takes the elevator up to my apartment to bring me my food,
You meet him at the door.
right?
Yeah, right. And then 20 steps to go to and from taking a dump once a day.
Sure.
So.
And also, I have a second bathroom by the front door, so like I don't even have to go back into the office necessarily.
So this is real. I thought there's something was faulty, but yeah, you might be right. All right. How about bats from Mets or Kansas City? Singer does kind of look interesting in this spot at that ownership, but what about bats?
I think KC is really interesting, which shouldn't come as a surprise. But normally when I get to them, it's kind of against my will. Here, though, I mean, good matchup against Carrasco, second in stack score. The same reasons I normally get to them, Witt, Perez, obviously being good plays at shortstop and catcher. You're getting a cheap Melendez, Garcia, Massey, Olivares. But on top of that, like Carrasco's just been so bad. 374 expected WOBA to righties, 377 to lefties. Kansas City right now getting 24% ownership. So that's the big difference here. They are projected to be the highest owned team on the slate. Don't always love getting to, don't love playing the popular offense that has like an 85 WRC plus, but it is a good spot and they are really cheap.
Julian asks, I follow your videos every day, but can you talk about your daily routine and analysis of players? Like, what does a day look like when you sit down and look at fantasy? Adams is just sitting down and looking at fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if on days I'm not doing content, it involves getting to my computer like 45 minutes before lock, copying and pasting stuff, clicking go in like Fantasy Cruncher and Sims, and then playing whatever comes out. Like my entire actual process is automated, so there's not a lot to say.
Pops said if he gets a hoverboard, how to make it less than 10. Dude, you got to get a hoverboard. If you just cruised around your house on one of those, no, on a what are the mall cop things called? The Segways.
Yeah.
If you just cruise around your house on a Segway, Jordan, you'd have to open the show with him not at his desk yet, and him rolling in on a Segway. All right, Baltimore.
And just to follow up on that one question, like Sunday is the day I don't do content. I know this Sunday I made my lineups, entered them, looked at what I had, and realized, and I had like 20% Rich Hill or something. Realized I had no idea like what pitchers were even playing that day. Like if I'm not doing content, I'm not looking at anything.
Well, that's also why like the MLB lineup generator and the Sims tool kind of eliminate that issue sometimes.
Yeah, Humboldt said my process involves waiting for the lineup generator to start coughing them out.
Yeah, but that, I mean, in all seriousness, it is. That's why I always say like the lineup generator, particularly for people that are starved for time, like maybe you enjoy hand building and you enjoy going through all of it, but you don't always have the time to do it. The lineup generator is $4.48 for the first week, and then after that it's $8.95. You go in, you select what type of stacks you want, or you can just do all stacks. What type of lineups could be all lineups, and then you click generate. And it's putting lineups out. We're already simulating thousands of lineups before you get these. All the bad ones, as Josh likes to say, all the bad ones are thrown in the garbage, and you're getting only the good lineups. You can see the optimal projection for every one of them. You can see how chalky or contrarian all of those lineups are. And then you can save or discard however many you want, upload them straight to CSV on the DraftKings or FanDuel, or if you're on your phone, it's optimized for mobile as well. You can lock players, you can swap players out, although I always suggest don't go too crazy with that. But I think that's also why a ton of people have had a lot of success with it. That's why we've seen people playing the mini max or the quarter, shipping 1,000, 1,500, 3,000. Jake the other day, $5,000 in the mega mini max, and I say there's no doubt that as far as like pricing tiers go across tools across the industry, there's no better tool for the price than the lineup generator, hands down. And you've seen that in the results, particularly with low stakes. But yeah, like Adam said, a lot at Sunday, he might not even know who's playing and he still gets lineups in. The lineup simulator, same, like I know you use Sims, right? Like you use Sims and you're just simulating lineups and you're pulling the ones with the highest simulated ROI. And
yeah, like I used to years ago, my process was sitting on my computer all day digging through Baseball Savant, trying to like find a bunch of stats and stuff. And it was interesting and fun. And I was a hell of a lot worse at DFS than I am now.
yeah, yeah, it is like they're going to make better lineups than you're making by hand. Some people enjoy making them by hand, but to have even the generator as a companion piece, even if you're playing $2 a day at the price, it's worth it. And then if you're 150 maxing the 20 or the 15, or you're just playing, bigger stakes and high entry, not even crazy stakes, but like higher stakes than a couple bucks a day, the lineup simulator is the generator on steroids. That gives you everything you need. It's a massive game changer in the industry. We're going to have it for football too. I can't wait. That's in the description. So link to the generator in the description, link to the lineup simulator, whatever style of play, whatever you're most comfortable with, check it out. Check it out. See if you like it. I think you will. I think you're going to love these tools for sure. And if you're looking for all of the tools for all the sports, 50% off, top stack, top pitchers, ownership, all that stuff, that link's down there as well. You'll see Stochastic plus Platinum, whether it's a week or a month, one sport or all sports. We got you guys covered on all fronts, whether you're playing a few bucks or a lot of money every day.
Baltimore, I'm already up to 148 steps today.
What's that?
I'm already up to 148 steps today.
All right, that's not too bad. We're in business, dude. All right. That's like 0.05 miles, probably.
Yeah, I was running late, so I started the coffee and then came in, got in the Zoom room, had to go back and get the coffee.
Nice. Jack Flaherty and Kevin Gausman, 8-run total in Toronto. Gausman's a stud, getting 62% ownership. Why don't you break both pitchers down here? Because obviously the heavy ownership's going to Gausman, and for good reason. The strikeout upside spectacular.
Yeah, arguably the best pitcher in baseball. I think should be favored for the Cy Young in the American League. He's not, but should be. 2.89 xFIP, 33% strikeout percentage. It's a tough matchup against the Orioles. They have plenty of good hitters in this lineup, but 3.5 implied run total, $11,200 price tag on a slate where we do just have questions about almost every other pitcher. So he looks really good despite the tough matchup. You're going to get a lot of left-handed power in this lineup from Baltimore. Gausman has allowed a 204 expected ISO to lefties, so that's a little concerning, but still only a 311 expected WOBA, 30.6% K percentage. Still certainly has the advantage here, even in a dangerous matchup.
Yeah. You talking about Lizzo, Jordan? I know. I mean, talk about the pot calling the kettle fat, right? That is crazy. Well, I heard she also had them performing like disgusting sexual acts as well.
I'll say that's what I'd seen. I hadn't seen the fat shaming thing.
Yeah. I assumed when she was like weight shaming them, she was shaming them for being thin.
I have no idea.
Jordan laughs. That's a thing now, right? Like fat activism and stuff, where it's like if you're thin and in shape, you're the devil. So I don't know. Oh, they were? And she was found. That's crazy. The gall. Man, I almost have to respect that, but I don't. Okay. Did you hit on Flaherty yet? If you want to hit on Flaherty.
Yeah, I mean, Flaherty, in terms of talent, is pretty clearly the third best pitcher on the slate behind Gausman and Scherzer. Tough matchup with Toronto. $8,100 price tag is reasonable. We have seen him take some strides, as the year's gone on. He started out the year pretty poorly. Overall, 22% strikeout percentage, 4.46 xFIP. Likely that those numbers get better going forward, but not an easy landing spot here against Toronto. It's definitely a pitcher that I want to pay attention to going forward because we know that he has talent and there's just been a lot of inconsistency with him. It strikes me as the type of guy Baltimore is likely to make at least somewhat better compared to St. Louis, but that this is still his first start with the team. He's been there like 24, 36 hours, something like that. I don't expect him to be markedly different than he was in St. Louis at this point. Tough matchup with the Blue Jays. So he's getting around 22% ownership. He should. 26% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. And there is certainly a talent gap between him and everyone else, but it's also still a tough matchup with the Jays. So far this season, righties, only a 118 expected ISO against him, 143 expected ISO to lefties. So that's good. He hasn't given up a ton of power. He does also have a 27% K percentage against righties. So predominantly right-handed lineup, but they are tough to strike out.
Baltimore has the second lowest top stack probability on the slate and the top stack tool. White Sox lowest against Scherzer. So no surprise there. Heaviest ownership coming into both of those guys. Is there any interest in bats given that we only have 4 games here? Toronto, 11% top stack probability. It's really, I mean, in the middle of the pack amongst a bunch of teams with flat in that right there. Same with like ownership, 10% aggregate ownership on them. What do you make of bats on either side before we round out the early slate?
They are not the most high probability teams. They're not the cheapest teams, but they are still interesting because both pitchers are getting ownership. You know, if you go to Toronto and they beat up Flaherty, you are knocking off around a quarter of the field. And if you go to Baltimore and they get to Gossman, you're knocking off, 2/3 of the field. So like between the White Sox against Scherzer and Baltimore against Gossman, even though Gossman's the better pitcher, I prefer getting to the Orioles just because they have so much more talent than the White Sox do. So on a short slate, getting 6% aggregate ownership and with the amount of negative correlation to the field, they are a interesting tournament stack, but clearly very low probability to succeed with an 8% chance of being the top stack. Toronto looks okay. Like I said, Flaherty doesn't give up a lot of power. Toronto has plenty of it, but I think I actually prefer the Baltimore side just because of the negative correlation with Gossman.
Arizona and San Francisco. Brandon Fod. Look, I would love to see where you stand on a guy like this because it's not. Never mind. Because if the park is really good, but this guy hasn't really shown much to suggest that he's, a quality MLB pitcher. He's really gotten tuned up in a lot of his starts. You haven't seen a ton of strikeout upside. I guess the only silver lining here is that it's in San Francisco against a Giants team that does strike out a decent amount.
Yeah, there are strikeouts here. This is a pretty highly regarded pitching prospect, so hopefully puts things together sooner rather than later. But he has certainly struggled so far in the majors, and this is a Giants team that does have a lot of power, even though it's a park that downplays power. Fod so far this year, I don't even see him on Fangraphs, but so far this year, he's against lefties, which is going to be most of the San Francisco lineup. 161 expected ISO, 20% strikeout percentage. Righties have really gotten to him. 365 expected ISO, 14.5% K percentage. Does have a changeup that he throws a lot to lefties, so maybe that's why you're seeing him be a bit reverse splits. If he can continue that, it does set up well for a matchup with the Giants. The problem is just the amount of good hitters and power that this Giants lineup has. So I agree he should be the most popular of the sub Jack Flaherty pitchers, but I think he's also pretty comparable in terms of range of outcomes to guys like Carrasco and Toussaint that are getting quite a bit less ownership. So that's why earlier I'd said I wouldn't be surprised if I sort of end up flat amongst Singer, Carrasco, Fott, Toussaint, as opposed to taking the stand that the field is on Fod.
What about on the other side of this one, with Beck expected to be the long reliever in this game? Alexander, the opener. It doesn't seem like a spot, especially with very little strikeout upside here, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, pretty tough spot. The only, I guess, argument is that pitching today is really weak and Beck is $4,000. But also keep in mind, San Francisco, whether it's the team lying or their reporters sucking at what they do, they've been wrong on their long relievers multiple times in the last couple of weeks. They had reported it was going to be Alex Wood, probably 10 or so days ago. And Wood ended up coming in, but he came in for like the 5th, 6th, and 7th inning after Jake Junis. The other day, they said it was going to be Desclafani. Desclafani never even entered the game. So you do have that risk factor, too, of the Giants team is not telling their beat writers what they're doing. So whatever they report, you still kind of have to take with a grain of salt. If you were confident it was Beck, it would just be that he's 4K and the other cheap pitchers are bad and just more expensive. But it's tough to get there, especially in the spot against Arizona.
Yeah, it is. With bats, too, I mean, 8.5 run total is kind of high for San Francisco. Do the Giants bats make sense against Brandon Pfaadt or I mean, again, I'm kind of talking in circles here because you just look at all of these teams. Texas has the highest top stack probability. Then you've got the Mets against Brady Singer, but Singer's not like awful, and he has shown flashes recently. You have San Francisco third at 14% top stack probability, 14% aggregate ownership, and a solid value score against Brandon Pfaadt. I mean, I guess there's that. They're cheap. San Francisco bats.
Yeah, never mind. Yeah, they're first in stack score. They look good. Like I said, Brandon Pfaadt has been better against lefties than righties this year, but still hasn't been great. And these Giants bats are just so cheap for the amount of power that you get. Wade, Conforto, Davis, Peterson, Bailey, all above average power. Bottom of the order is not nearly as exciting, but they're also free. This park is about league average for run scoring. It's very bad for home runs, but that's not as much of an issue on a 4-game slate either. It's just less likely that you're going to have any team that hits 5 home runs or something like you would on a bigger slate where you basically it's guaranteed to happen. So getting the Giants makes a lot of sense. And it's also interesting that very similar top value percentage to Kansas City. But right now we have 14% aggregate ownership coming into San Francisco compared to 24% to the Royals. Now, maybe that changes and flattens out. But if it continues to look like that, I would much rather be getting to the Giants.
Aside from the top 2 pitchers, because that's very obvious in this early slate, we'll wrap this up and talk main slate here. Aside from the top 2 pitchers, who would your favorite? I know you said you're going to mix them in, and I think that makes perfect sense. But just, to round out the slate, who would your favorite non-Kershaw Gausman pitcher be? And who would your favorite non-Texas stack be?
So my favorite non-Kershaw Gausman pitcher would be Scherzer. But assuming you meant Scherzer and not Kershaw.
Did I say Kershaw?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Non-Scherzer Gausman.
I mean, Flaherty, if you can get there. But of the cheap guys, it is Brandon Pfaadt. It's just that from an ownership standpoint, I think he might be getting a little bit too much.
And favorite non-Ranger stack?
San Francisco.
Okay. Let's talk main slate. By the way, shout out to you guys. Well over 100 likes here. We're in business. See what we can do. See if we can pop north of 150 over this final main slate here. Early slates wrapped up. We'll talk Maine, Houston, and the New York Yankees. Christian Javier, Clark Schmidt. I think it was you saying this the other day when you and I were on the show that that Christian Javier was kind of the most absurdly priced pitcher for a really long time, just based on performance and all of that stuff. Now you've got him down to 8,600 right-hander against the Yankees. Granted, not a favorable ballpark, but let's start there with Javier. Then we can talk about Clark Schmidt. Do you think this price point has come down enough to a point where you go, all right, I can get on board with this?
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up with a question real quick for the early slate. Benny Hernandez asked about the Giants pinch hitting. It's always a concern, but it's a much bigger concern when they face left-handed pitching because most of their best hitters are left-handed. So what happens against lefties is you'll get a couple of them starting on the bench. They'll go to like Austin Slater instead of Jock Peterson or Austin Slater instead of Conforto. And then as soon as the other team brings in a right-handed reliever, Austin Slater's out of the game and Peterson or Conforto, whoever didn't start, is in the game. And you see that at a couple of different positions. Against righties, you don't have that issue because like all of their best hitters are left-handed. So they're starting the game. Teams don't have as many lefty relievers as they do righty relievers. So it's harder for them to match up and you're just not going to get put in situations frequently where like Jock Peterson's getting pinch hit for example. As far as Christian Javier goes, though, yeah, the price tag has come down enough. He has struggled this year and certainly wasn't worth some of the price tags we were seeing on him. But overall, he does have a 23% strikeout percentage. 5.02 xFIP is problematic. Also drastic splits between righties and lefties. 31% K percentage to righties, only a 17% strikeout percentage to lefties. He's given up power to both sides. 237 expected ISO to righties, 206 to lefties. So, a pitcher like that in Yankee Stadium is certainly risky. But overall, the Yankees do have a below average offense. He is down to 8,600. So he's fine. I still wouldn't say safe or that, I'm comfortable with him, but 17% ownership, 17% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher. No real problems there.
Any interest in Schmidt on the other side?
Not a lot. I mean, he's an okay pitcher. He's 7,200, but it is a tough spot against Houston.
Ownership's really flat here for pitching today, outside of Shohei Ohtani. And
I think it should be. I mean, a lot of these guys are similar. Like Clark Schmidt has been better at preventing runs this year than Javier. Very similar in terms of strikeout stuff. 22% strikeout percentage, 4.4 xFIP. He does have the more difficult matchup. A lot of these guys are just going to project similarly. He is cheap enough at 7,200 that you'll get some, but it is a very scary spot. You have a healthy Houston team with Altuve and Alvarez back. They are hitting in Yankee Stadium. Schmidt has been much worse against lefties than righties this year. 352 expected WOBA to lefties, 284 to righties, 26% K percentage to righties, 18% to lefties. Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez probably going to be the only lefties in this lineup, but they are very, very good ones and look like 2 of the better hitting plays on the slate.
That's a great call at Yankee Stadium. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense here. Now, are you looking at this then more of a one-off, two-off type spot than stacking?
No, I mean, I still think the stack is good. It's just that Schmidt has been solid against righties, and the Yankees do have a good bullpen behind him. So, like, getting the Houston stacks is still perfectly fine. Schmidt's not the type of pitcher where you're just saying, oh, I can't play the Astros in Yankee Stadium. But individually, it's just whether I'm stacking Houston or stacking someone else, I definitely want to be getting to Alvarez and Tucker.
Okay. Let's talk about Mitch Keller here and Adrian Hauser, Pittsburgh and Milwaukee, 8.5 run total in this game. Mitch Keller, he started off the season just purely dominant. The strikeout stuff has still been there recently, but he's gotten blown up in a couple of his last few starts. Hasn't been pitching particularly deep into games, but still 9,100. Pretty neutral matchup against Milwaukee. It is at Miller Park. Where's his ownership coming in at?
Like 15%.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? Like he still has the ceiling. He still has strikeout upside, but at 9,100, that means that you're going to forego some of these other guys in that 8 and 9K range. Javier, Urias. We'll talk about Ohtani at 11K, but yeah, Mitch Keller, kind of a casualty there, probably would get more ownership because hell, Sonny Gray at 9,400 is only getting 6% ownership against St. Louis.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because Keller's sort of been like a casualty of the slate guy all season long because his price tag elevated pretty quickly and put him in a range where he was putting up numbers or has put up numbers this year that are decent compared to the guys around him. But you're normally going to have guys that have better strikeout stuff and longer track records. And so it's been really tough to get to Keller all year. With this being a shorter slate, he's actually getting 15% ownership, which is one of the higher ownership marks I can remember on Keller. And his salary's come down a bit. Decent strikeout matchup or decent matchup in general against Milwaukee. It is a park downgrade going into American Family Life Field or whatever the hell they call it.
It's not Miller Park anymore?
No, it's like it's like American Family Values Field or something.
What?
It is American Family Field.
Oh, I like Miller Park better.
That's Josh and I were talking about it the other day that like when a park has a corporate name and it changes, like normally who cares? Like Staples Center, like Staples isn't an LA specific thing, but I had said that Busch Stadium's an example of like, it would actually suck if that changed. Miller's another good one. Like that's very Milwaukee centric.
Yeah. Coors Field, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just all beer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All the beer ones.
It is true though. I mean, how about, and then you got some wild one, like Smoothie King Center.
Like, and NBA has some wild arena names.
Talking Stick Resort Arena.
Phoenix, right?
Yeah. Walking or talk? I think Talking Stick.
It's Talking.
Yeah, Talking Stick Resort Arena. That's a mouthful, but man, so many jokes I can't make. But anyway, let's talk about, that was actually food related. I was going to call back to our Lizzo conversation. Adrian Hauser against Pittsburgh. What's the run total for Pittsburgh?
4.1 for the Pirates.
4.1. Hauser's getting, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pitchers between 15 and 21% ownership. Hauser's right in the middle at 17% against the Pirates.
Yeah, and he's not a good strikeout pitcher, but he is decent at limiting production. He can work relatively deep in the games. Like he's not limited or anything. 146 expected ISO to righties, 147 to lefties. The big thing that stands out though, and the reason he's getting 17% ownership is that he's $5,200. Like I don't know how you land on that price tag as opposed to 6,500, 6,600 where he probably should be. It's not a bad matchup against the Pirates, but again, it's just that he's $5,200. He's the cheapest starting pitcher on the slate. So from a value standpoint, he just really stands out as a good point per dollar projection if you need to pay down.
What about bats here going up? I mean, like you said, though, Hauser's not a good strikeout pitcher, but he's not the best opponent to stack against usually either.
No, but I am somewhat interested in the Pirates just because they're cheap and they are getting a nice park upgrade here. Jack Sawinski in particular, $3,600 facing a pitcher that's going to let him put the ball in play. The guy's got an expected ISO above 300 against right-handed pitching this year. He strikes out a lot, but when he hits the ball, he hits it hard and far, and the salary just, for whatever reason, doesn't move. Brian Reynolds is always good. Hayes gives you some upside. McCutchen, Henry Davis. You actually, like the 1 through 5 here, if it's Hayes, Reynolds, McCutchen, Sawinski, Davis, is actually a solid 1 through 5 that is pretty close to free. in a good park for hitting. So I do have some interest in the Pirates just from a value standpoint. We have them third in stack score because of how inexpensive they are. 7.5% chance of being the top stack, 9.5% aggregate ownership, but also an 18% chance of being the top value stack, which is second behind Minnesota. So even though Hauser does a good job of limiting power, I am interested in getting to the Pirates. Brewers are a more difficult sell. Keller has struggled a bit lately, been coming back down to earth somewhat, but 130 expected ISO to righties, 159 to lefties. Overall this year, striking out 25.7% of hitters, 3.69 xFIP. And the Brewers lineup just isn't that exciting. Like, you have Christian Yelich, you have Contreras, you have Adames. All of those guys are good, but you're also paying for all of them. Then you get, Carlos Santana, Sal Frelick, Mark Canha. None of those guys are that exciting. So I do like the Contreras Adames component, that you get, a good catcher and a good shortstop. That's always going to make a stack look more appealing, because it's great when you can mini stack or get one-offs at positions that actually have good hitters, because you're covering like catcher and shortstop in your stacks. So I do like that part of it, but I think I probably get to the Pirates first.
Looking at Minnesota and St. Louis, it's, I understand leverage and trying to be contrarian in some spots, but it seems pretty difficult to get to Sonny Gray. And you had mentioned that his pitch count had come back up to a point where you could feel a little bit more comfortable with it, for sure. But even looking at his last 2 starts, 6 innings, gets through 6 relatively clean, 2 runs, 88 pitches, 6 innings, 3 runs, but only 5 hits, 80 pitches, doesn't come back out. And as far as strikeouts go, for a $9,400 pitcher, you're talking about a 23% strikeout rate on the season. He's a good pitcher, but that's a pretty prohibitive price point, especially when he's not going up against a team that's just going to lay down in St. Louis.
Yeah, it's not a great strikeout matchup. They do have quality hitters. From a talent standpoint, if you get to a low on Sonny Gray, I think that's fine. 23% strikeout percentage, 3.83 xFIP, but the strikeout numbers are down this year from where they normally are. And it's just kind of a tough price point to get to, because Mitch Keller is going to look better at a slightly cheaper price tag in a better strikeout spot. We have Keller projected about half a point higher than Gray, but also $300 less. But then you also have, and this is why Keller is not getting more ownership as well, you have Julio Urias for a little bit more money facing Oakland. There's a bigger gap we have a 2.5 point gap in projection from Urias to Keller. And then you have Ohtani, who's not in the same price range, but is clearly the number 1 pitcher on the slate. So it just starts to become difficult to get to Sonny Gray.
SMP said Heinz Field becoming Acrisure Stadium was unfortunate. And that's a great one. Heinz Field, just that name, at least for me, growing up, was always like, that was Heinz Field.
Right, exactly. Like, I didn't even associate it with ketchup. It was just like, that's where the Steelers play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you see a ketchup bottle and you're like, oh, these are the same guys that this is the stadium, instead of that's the ketchup company. Yeah.
Right.
Luke Weaver on the other side. What do we have as far as top stack score goes for Minnesota today against, or not Weaver, I'm sorry, Liberatore.
Minnesota is they're first in stack score and
first in value too.
Yeah, first in value, first in stack score, tied for 4th in top stack percentage with Cincinnati.
Looks like a pretty interesting spot here.
Yeah, it does. Team with a lot of power. They do have a lot of left-handed power, and Liberatore is left-handed, so there's that. That you're not really going to like. 154 expected ISO, but still 381 expected WOBA to lefties. It's not like he's been lights out there. Carlos Correa, right-handed. Buxton, if he's back in the lineup, right-handed. Polanco will be hitting from the right side. Farmer will be hitting from the right side. So, like, they're going to have a right-handed heavy lineup. It's just not going to be the normal lineup that has a bunch of power, because a lot of those lefties are going to be sitting. That is actually a huge risk here, though. The Twins, we talked about it with the Giants a minute ago. The Twins also pinch hit aggressively. We've seen them more than once this year where there will be like a right-handed opener and they'll start their, normal left-handed lineup and then pinch hit in like the second inning. Like, they've done that more than once. So that is a real concern here where, you stack the Twins, but then in the 4th, or like they get to Liberatore, and then in the 4th inning, Kyle Farmer's getting pinch hit for, Michael Taylor maybe getting pinch hit for. So that is a legitimate risk if they run out this right-handed heavy lineup, but it is still a good spot. Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton in particular, those guys are not getting pinch hit for. Jorge Polanco will not get pinch hit for. He's a switch hitter. There's no reason. So those guys, Correa, Buxton, Polanco, I really like Ryan Jeffers at 2,500. I like the guys that don't normally start though, like Kyle Farmer, do come with substantial pinch hit risk.
Liberatore on the other side, 13.9% K rate this season, 5.79 xFIP. There's some stuff that doesn't look all that great here. It's not exactly like he's getting a ton of ground balls either. Doesn't give up a lot of in the 32 innings that he's thrown, so not a ton. 0.56 home runs per 9, so he's done a decent job keeping the ball in the park, but he's still only pulling 1% ownership, only 6% top 2 probability in the top pitchers tool. And then on the other side, like you mentioned with Minnesota, the bats look pretty good here. What about St. Louis bats on the other side? Because I don't think we need to spend any time on Matthew Liberatore.
No, and I think St. Louis is one of the more difficult teams to get to on this slate. If you're going there, I think it is simply they have hitters with power, and Sonny Gray could pitch poorly. I mean, we saw them almost break the slate yesterday against Joe Ryan, but then they just stopped doing anything after like the 3rd or 4th inning. But they have that type of power where Sonny Gray is just not hitting spots. They can do a lot of damage. So there is that upside, but they're dead last in the stack score. They're relatively expensive. 6% chance of being the top stack is in like the bottom 3rd on this slate. So aside from just let's hope the Cardinals hit home runs, there's not a lot that points us to St. Louis.
Max, yeah, that I remember the Warrington skate rink. There used to be hockey there too. It's not there anymore, but that place was, yeah, I used to play there when I was like 7, 8 years old. Yeah, man, I remember. Good times. How about Cincinnati and Chicago? The Cubs are just pouring in runs recently. I mean, absolutely dominant offensively of late, at least over the last few games. They have the highest top stack score on the slate, 14.8% for the 6-game main slate. Value scores fine, 8.7%. They're number 2 in stack score, looking at the top stacks tool. Again, 50% off all these tools if you want Stochastic plus Platinum, guys. 50% for your first week or for your first month. Baseball or all sports, play it the way you want. Behind only Minnesota, though, Cubs have the highest stack score at 12.4% against Luke Weaver today. Are we looking at any significant wind or anything worth talking about, or just that the Cubs bats are red hot right now?
Yeah, it doesn't look like the wind should be an issue. Looks like it should be around 80 degrees, wind, I think, blowing across the field, but 5.8 implied run total for the Cubs. Luke Weaver sucks. 209 expected ISO to lefties, 15% strikeout percentage, 244 expected ISO to righties, 18.7% strikeout percentage. Just going right back to the Cubs. Like, they're going to be popular again. That goes without saying. 16% aggregate ownership is highest on the slate. But like you said, 15% top stack percentage is highest on the slate. 12.4 stack score is second highest. So they still look good. Mike Tauchman's only 3,400. So you get a nice value bat, most likely leading off. Ian Happ is still only 3,300. Bellinger's priced up. Swanson's price tag is very reasonable at 4,600. So is Horner at 48. Christopher Morel's up to 5K. So like they are getting a little bit more expensive, but they're still not going to be that difficult to get to. Luke Weaver gives it up to both sides of the plate. The ownership is the only concern here. Like, are you able to make Cubs stacks that are still different elsewhere? But other than that, Cubs look great. And contrary to popular belief that came up in chat yesterday, you can score a lot of runs even if you scored a lot of runs the day before.
Oh, was this one of those like, hey, the lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place type of?
Yeah, it was Sean V and Jake were very adamant that no team has ever had a good game after scoring 20 runs the previous game.
What did they score yesterday? 14? 16?
I think 16.
Yeah. Weaver, 17% K rate, 2.3 home runs per 9. Is that right? My God. 2.3 home runs per 9 across 86 innings this year. Yeah, that doesn't look good. No surprise the Cubs have an implied total close to 6 in this one.
There's like there's nothing. I get like such weird enjoyment out of like when chat just makes these arguments that you can prove are wrong with like 2 seconds of looking at something. More than one person now has said Minnesota is a terrible offense. They have a 109 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year. They're a top. They're 11th. They're tied for 10th in production against right-handed pitching. They just strike out a lot.
Right. Yeah, it's a either or situation with Minnesota for sure. Like, yeah, Hudson could come in and light them up, or they just rip off 5 home runs in the first 6 innings. It's the way it is. Jameson Taillon, he's allowed some power this year too. 1.42 home runs per 9. And And it's funny because it's not like the Reds' offensive production has been completely dormant in this series. It's just overshadowed by the fact that the Cubs have been dropping double-digit runs in each of the last two games. But Tyon, 290x ISO to lefties this year, 118 to righties. So that is a 0.092 actual ISO, 282 xWOBA versus righties. But then, man, 404 xWOBA, 290 x ISO to lefties. Dramatic splits for Jameson Taillon this season.
Yeah, huge splits for Taillon. He's been legitimately good against righties. I know there was a start against, I think it was the Yankees earlier this year, where it was like, well, he doesn't feel good playing Taillon, but if he's ever going to do anything, like have a good game, it's here. And he like lit them up because it was just the right-handed heavy lineup. 24.5% K percentage, 282 expected WOBA to righties, but polar opposite to lefties. 16% K percentage, 404 expected WOBA. De La Cruz should be back in the lineup today. And it's always difficult to like truly recommend De La Cruz at 6,100 because that's like the upside obviously is there, but he's not that good of a hitter. But this is a perfect De La Cruz spot. Pitcher that cannot limit power to lefties and doesn't miss bats. Looks really, really good for De La Cruz. Friedel's going to look good. Fraley looks good. Votto looks good. You can still, if you're stacking, obviously get to like Matt McLain, Spencer Steer, but De La Cruz in particular, Friedel, Fraley, Votto, really like the left-handed bats here for Cincinnati.
2.3 home runs per nine to lefties this year, 0.6 to righties. Massively, just really dramatic splits for Taillon. So,
yeah, massive.
I mean, this is just one of those games where getting to both sides feels pretty good, particularly lefties in Cincinnati. What is the aggregate? You may have mentioned it. What's aggregate ownership on stack ownership on Cincinnati? 9.9%.
10%, 11% chance of being the top stack. Only a 4% chance of being the top value stack. So they're fourth in stack score. But if you can get there, great. That is the only question because, De La Cruz is really expensive. McLain is really expensive. Friedel, Fraley, Votto, they're reasonably priced, but it's not like they're cheap. On a slate where you have Ohtani to pay for, where you have Urias to pay for, might be somewhat difficult, but at the same time, you do have $7,500 Brian Wu, not the best spot, but cheap. Schmidt, same kind of thing. Javier is only 8,600. You have a free Adrian Hauser. So, obviously not the most exciting mid-range or pay down pitchers, but there are enough that at least have some chance of succeeding that you can get to the Reds if you want to.
And being price agnostic here, just kind of like not factoring in how easy or difficult it is to build stacks with certain teams. Clearly the best offensive game on both sides for this slate.
Yeah, and I hadn't even noticed it. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but Jameson Taillon right now is projected for 21% ownership.
I didn't mention that, but that seems outrageous.
Yeah, but also I get it. I kind of just like both sides here because he's 6,200. He just should be more expensive than that. So like my first thought when I saw 21% ownership was like, that's insane. But then I was like, okay, well, where should that ownership be going to? Clark Schmidt's already getting 18% against Houston. Brian Woo's already getting 21% against the Angels in Anaheim. Hauser's already getting 17%. Do you want to just start giving it to JP Sears against the Dodgers? Like, I don't.
That's true.
So I don't have an answer for like what pitcher in that price range isn't already getting ownership that I like.
That's fair. Yeah, and it's not like Taillon doesn't have any ceiling whatsoever. It's
right.
Just,
I mean, the guy's got a 20% strikeout percentage, 4.76 xFIP. He's not good, but we mentioned those splits. He could very easily just, if he can just somehow not get lit up by the lefties here, you do get like 4 righties in this projected lineup. And he's only 6,200. So it's just one of those where there's nothing that makes me feel confident about Taillon. But if I were to tell you that he shouldn't be getting ownership, then I have to tell you like which of these value pitchers should be getting more. And I certainly don't have that answer.
It's fair. Yeah. Do you like Cincinnati more than the Taillon side? Or does it not really even matter?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter. It's just, Taillon's a good value because he's so cheap. The Reds have a massive ceiling because Taillon's not very good. It just strikes me as one of those spots where it's pretty likely that either Taillon's a very useful play or the Reds are like a winning stack.
All right, let's talk about Seattle and LA. Before we do, I always tell you guys, exploit all the free money you can and do it on sites that are actually good. Don't just do it on sites that are terrible and then you wonder like, why did I do this? Sleeper, giving you 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100. You probably, I don't know about, like, a lot of you guys probably play fantasy. Maybe you play dynasty. I've been on Sleeper for a long time for their fantasy leagues. We have some in-house here at Stochastic Dynasty leagues on Sleeper. They have over 100,000 reviews in the App Store as well. Already did. So they get legitimate, awesome site for fantasy. They just recently, within, less than a year ago, months ago, added their pick'em format. But instead of being like, hey, we're gonna do things the way the rest of the industry does, they go, you know what? We want to allow people, when they're building out these cards, not only to be able to 100x their entry and play up to 8 legs in every card, but to be able to actually take props that aren't just standard, like on a traditional sportsbook where you'd see like a minus 120 and a minus 105 on either side or something like that. Like, we want to give them, how do we do that? How is it that we can allow them to put home run props or double props, into their cards? How can we allow them to put stolen bases or touchdown scores for like Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler types, but guys that are more long shots? What they did, simple. They went with the dynamic payouts, the dynamic pricing. So now, if you wanted to grab like a home run prop, say on a sports book, because this isn't sports betting, it's a DFS game, but they've built it so you can take these type of stats and place them into your cards, and essentially up to 100x. So how do you do that? All right, say Bryce Harper's plus 400 to homer, okay? Anywhere else. And of course, Sleeper likely available in all the states where legal sports betting isn't. They would go, all right, instead of just putting this to your card on an over or an under, it would be 4x multiplier. So you have multipliers attached to all of these. So you're getting paid more if one of these hits. Or even if the under is juiced heavily elsewhere, there'd be a heavy multiplier on that. You throw it in a card, and now you're getting paid out more on all of those. So you can actually take some long shots, whereas in a lot of these other pick and places, you can't. So if that's interesting to you, not to mention that they throw some free squares and some discounted plays out there a lot, where it's also just free money adding to the bankroll. Take advantage of the $100 for free. Even if you only have 10, 15, 20 bucks, take the 20, throw it in there, double it out of the gate. 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100. I threw the link in the description and in chat. But the dynamic pricing, man, especially for football when it rolls around, to be able to not just be, passing yards, receptions, rushing yards, but take shots on stuff that are long shots, adding them to your card, giving yourself a chance to hit some huge payouts, 50, 75, 100x, even if you're just doing it for fun at low stakes. Great place to do it is Sleeper. So check it out. Link in the description and in chat, and get that first match deposit 100% up to $100. All right. Seattle and the LA Angels wrap up these final 2 games here. Brian Wu, Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani, 46% ownership right now at $11,000. Adam, Brian Wu getting 21%. So a lot of ownership going to pitchers here. Got to start it with Ohtani, obviously. 39% top 2 pitcher probability. That's real nice for a guy getting 46% ownership.
Yeah, he looks great. Projecting nearly 3.5 points higher than Urias. That's the gap between 1 and 2 in projection today. Now, it does feel like we're on a stretch of like 50 straight days where the very clear number 1 pitcher gets rocked. But I mean, it didn't happen yesterday, but it wasn't the same type of spot. It feels like it's been like every slate where you get one of these where there's just like a massive gap and that guy sucks. But obviously you can't do anything about that. He looks fantastic. Best pitcher on the slate, 32% strikeout percentage, 3.52 xFIP. The negative is that the Mariners do have power, and this game is in a good hitter's park, wind blowing out a little bit. But the Mariners also have a lot of strikeouts. Active roster comes in with I lost it. It's like a 25% strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this season. I don't know why they're not showing up, but yeah, take my word for it. It's like 25. Oh, there it is. 24.9%, 105 WRC plus. So it looks good for Ohtani. Obviously the Mariners do have hitters that can do damage, but Ohtani's the number 1 pitcher on the slate. He deserves the ownership he's getting. And the other thing is the salary's not that big of a deal because you do have not necessarily good value options, but just a lot of value options. The salary would be a bigger deal on Ohtani if this were a slate where, say, you also had Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole and whatever other good pitchers you want to name that are, 9, 10K plus, because then you would be like, well, I want to pair Ohtani and one of these other aces. And so the salary really matters. You don't have that here. So like, even if you're pairing Ohtani and Urias, you're talking about like 21K a pitcher. That's still leaving you like between 3,500 and 4K per position on DraftKings. But you can also just go Ohtani and pick your favorite of Schmidt, Wu, Tyon, Hauser, and get basically whatever bats you want. So the salary isn't too prohibitive. And that is also another reason he's getting 46% ownership.
And there's a real conversation happening about letdown spots. That's crazy.
I'm sure it's a great conversation.
Because if the Cubs go off today, it's like, well, next game is a letdown spot.
Well, I think I clarified that one. They've gone off 2 days in a row, so now it's just a hot streak and it's going to continue, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. When you can twist it any way you want it, essentially.
Yeah.
Brian Wu here.
Hopefully we need one more big Cubs game, and then we can just get a full-fledged, like, half of chat thinks you have to play the Cubs because they're hot, and the other half thinks you can't play the Cubs because they can't do well 4 nights in a row.
Yeah, for sure. Do you like Brian Wu here?
Yeah. It's a scary spot. Park downgrade going into Anaheim, one of the better hitter parks in baseball. But there are strikeouts in the Angels lineup, 24% strikeout percentage on their active roster. Also a 114 WRC plus, in large part because Shohei Ohtani is the best hitter on the planet. But you do still have some other good enough hitters in this lineup as well. The big thing though is that Wu is only $7,500. He does give you good strikeout stuff. 25.8% K percentage this year, 4.09 xFIP, pulling about 21% ownership. So yeah, it's a dangerous spot, but it's dangerous for all of these guys. Schmidt's spot isn't any safer. Tyon's isn't any safer. Wu has the best strikeout stuff of the three.
Any interest in bats on either side from this game? 4.7, 4.1 implied totals for both teams and LA. It's not in Seattle, so that makes a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I think both offenses are at least somewhat interesting. For the Angels, it's that Brian Wu so far, and again, this is a small sample, but this is a pitcher that came straight from AA to the major leagues. Overall, he's been solid. His splits are massive. 33% K percentage to righties, sub 100 expected ISO, 214 expected WOBA. He's only struck lefties out 16% of the time.
Whoa.
392 expected WOBA, 243 expected ISO. Now, you should expect those numbers to kind of converge as we get a larger sample, but it's very reasonable to expect that he's going to struggle with left-handed hitters, especially in the short term when he doesn't have much experience above AA. This is a huge jump in talent that he's facing. And you have left-handed power, quality left-handed bats in this Angels lineup. Now, the problem is you can't roster Shohei Ohtani as a hitter. If you could, he would easily be the best hitting play on this slate, but you can't. But you're still going to get Rengifo from the left side at a cheap price tag. Moustakas is cheap. Moniak's having a good year. Matt Thaiss is cheap at catcher. You'll probably have those lefties in this lineup. So Ohtani not being there does make this a much weaker stack than otherwise would be, but it's still a good park, still offers some value. And then on the other side, the Mariners are one of the lowest probability stacks. That goes without saying when you're facing Shohei Ohtani. They're third in stack score, but they do carry a lot of power in terms of winning tournaments because if they get to Ohtani, and they do have power, if they get to Ohtani, you're just knocking off 50% of the field and you're getting a low owned stack. So it's not a high probability stack. The Angels certainly are more likely to succeed than the Mariners, but when the Mariners do succeed, you don't have a lot of competition at the top, which is nice.
Let's wrap it up with Oakland and LA. Julio Urias. I don't know what to make of the splits, these like ridiculous reverse splits this year. And they've never been that dramatic. Did you see his ISO against left-handed bats this season?
I'm pulling it up now. I do remember from his start against the Orioles that they were wild. Yeah, 367 expected ISO. Only 290 pitches thrown.
I know.
And it's still an insane number.
It's still insane. But if you look back, it's not like that. But I will say though, go ahead.
So I was going to say, when you look back though, it tells you that you shouldn't expect it to continue to be that extreme.
He's still better against righties.
Obviously. Right. But he's always given up power to lefties. If you just look from the start of the 2020 season through the 2022 season, he's still allowed a 193 expected ISO to lefties.
Which honestly is a good thing. There's probably a lot of managers out there that are just loading their lineup with righties because they're facing a lefty and not even looking at that.
Yeah, and the A's don't strike me as the most advanced team.
So I don't know. I mean, he's popular. He's almost $10,000 though. That to me is expensive, but it's as good a matchup as you're going to get. He's struggled a bit this season at times. He got blown up by Baltimore 2 starts back, but 23% K rate so far, 4.38 xFIP. But if you can have Tony Gonsolin or any of these guys going in there and lighting up this Athletics lineup, there's no reason to believe that Julio Urias can't.
Right. And also talking about the splits, he does strike out a lower percentage of righties than lefties. So from a DFS standpoint, it's not necessarily advantageous to get a right-handed heavy lineup, but it's also nitpicking when you're talking about a team as bad as Oakland. So Urias looks good here. The only concern, like you said, is the salary. If I have to choose to get away from either Urias or Ohtani, I would choose to get away from Urias before Ohtani, but still expect to get plenty of him. He still looks good. The A's cannot hit. It's a park upgrade for them. Dodger Stadium, one of the best home run parks in baseball. Oakland, one of the worst, but not a lot of power here. If you were looking to target against Urias, I think it's Brent Rooker at 3,300 stands out as the obvious guy that you would want to get to first. But 3 flat implied run total for the A's. Urias, despite whatever minor concerns we just brought up, still looks very good.
Yeah, and Sean V, you're right. Gonsolin wasn't good in the DFS sense, but you don't expect a ton of production from. But he's still 1 run across on a solo shot across 5 innings. Only struck out 3 though. Did get the win, but yeah, I'm just saying Urias is a better pitcher with more upside than him, and some of these other guys can go in there and just allow virtually no production whatsoever. But Dodger bats today, unless you wanted to talk about JP Sears at all.
All that I really have to say about Sears is that he does give you strikeout ability. He has a 23.5% K percentage against righties this year, but big park downgrade. He's also given up plenty of power to righties with a 232 expected ISO. Mookie Betts left yesterday's game early. I don't remember, or I didn't catch if that was him re-aggravating his injury or if it's because the Dodgers were just kicking the shit out of the A's and they didn't want Mookie to be out there anymore. I think it was probably the latter, but I'm pulling it up now to double check. No, don't even see anything on it. So I assume he's going to be in the lineup, and if he is, he's one of the best plays on the slate. Will Smith will look really good. The really nice thing about the Dodgers is that while they're expensive at the top with Betts, Freeman, Smith, and Muncy, the stack as a whole isn't that expensive. Ahmed Rosario is 3,900, Chris Taylor 33, Kike 31. You can very easily get 2 or 3 of the really good hitters, and then 2 or 3, depending on what you did with the really good hitters, of the cheap guys, and still have a very high upside offense here against a pitcher that gives up power and a bullpen that isn't very good.
Well, there you have it, man. Hey, follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, me at Lafayette_D. Shout out to Jordan Klein for producing as always. Remember, Sleeper 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100. Check out the dynamic payouts pricing. It's a really, really sweet format. It's going to get even better when football rolls around. Hands down, going to be sick. College football too. Lineup generator 448 for the first week. Be like everyone else. Start winning some money, even if you're playing lower stakes. 50% off all our tools. Lineup simulators down there. Everything in the link in the description. Before you go, peruse it. See if there's anything you like for your style of play, or if you're just looking to get some free money from Sleeper. We'll see you guys back here tonight. Deeper dive, live before lock. Maybe just one of those. I know I'll be on live before lock for preseason football. Hall of Fame, Matt Kajeski and myself at 7 o'clock. So whatever you're doing tonight, come hang out, and we'll catch you back here on the Strategy Show tomorrow morning. Peace.